And I was lying in hospital feeling very sorry for myself. From that moment onwards, I was in a wheelchair for about 3 or 4 weeks. And I could not see myself getting out of this wheelchair. Anyway, everybody had left me. A hospital chaplain did a beeline for me, came and sat next to me at the bed, and I looked at her and I said, "Oh gosh, you're going to be here to convert me now, aren't you?" And she said, "No, I'm not here to convert you, but I've recognised you. I've seen you in the newspaper." And then she said something to me which became my mantra. She said, "If the good Lord has made you disabled, if the good Lord has given you this purpose on life, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Go out there and become king of disabled people. Go out there and be the person that they need you to be for them." And she said that, and then she left. She whizzed off. And for a few seconds, I thought, have I just had some kind of a moment where nobody? I looked around the rest of the ward as if anybody else had seen it. Was it just me imagining her being there? That piece of advice that she gave, it stayed with me. And next day, I worked so hard in physiotherapy, and I got walking again. And suddenly gave me the kick up the backside I needed.
Every man carries something: expectations, silence, struggles, the weight of having to look unbreakable. The Dad Project is a home for real, unfiltered conversations on men's mental health, the kind that have been missing for far too long. We share powerful stories and raw perspectives from those living it and those guiding men through it. Filmed at the Old Court in Windsor, it's about breaking silence, reshaping strength, and creating conversations that actually matter. I'm your host, Naroop Jhooti. Let's talk. Before we start, let me take 30 seconds and speak to you directly. This podcast exists to share real stories, honest conversations that inspire growth, self-belief, and meaningful change. If you get value from these episodes, following or subscribing is the easiest way to support what we're building here. It helps this reach more people who appreciate authentic conversation, and it allows us to keep creating stories like this. All right, thank you for being here. Now, into the episode. Amo, what's the part of your story that most people rarely ask about, but that matters to you the most?
God, that's a good question. The one that I've been interviewed a lot. I've been discussing my life story for the last 4 or 5 years. But the one question which nobody ever really digs deep in is the turning point for me.
Turning point of?
When I became conscious, that eureka moment.
Really?
When I awoke.
Describe, what does conscious mean to you?
To me, when I suddenly became aware of myself, my role in society, and my ability to control my own emotion and also my own destiny.
I love that. How old were you?
I was around 17, 18.
Young.
17 or 18. It was, I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't plain sailing from there. That was the moment where I stopped reacting to some extent to the environment and started to make bold decisions. I'll tell you what it was. I went to college. Not that I did much at college, but I went to college and I was having a bad day and I started crying. And a friend of mine, I think he just cried in empathy with me, and we both cried for 2 or 3 hours. It got infectious that everybody came up to us, ended up leaving in tears for no reason. But I went home that evening and my mum was very confused as to what's wrong with him. Why does he keep crying? And my best friend knocked on the door and she said to him, "Can you have a word with him? There's something wrong with him. He keeps crying." And I cried like a baby for probably 4 hours, non-stop. It was like the whole 17, 18 years of emotion was coming out in one go.
What did you feel? What did you question why you were crying?
No, I just couldn't stop. It was it was such a powerful experience. I wanted to stop. I kept thinking to myself, right, I remember it vividly. I wanted to stop crying, and it just would not happen. And so I just went with the flow, cried and cried and cried. But that very next morning when I woke up, I suddenly felt like a 100 weight had been lifted off me. I felt so much lighter. And that's when I decided. It's not like I had planned to make a decision, but I just felt, you know what? No more crap. I'm making decisions about me. I don't care who it upsets, who gets annoyed in the process, who gets hurt in the process. It's about me now. I'm not having people say things about me which are going to influence which direction I go. And I'm sure we're going to cover some of those subjects as to those troubling conversations that were had about me. But that was the point. And I say we haven't really discussed that with anybody before. And that, to me, was a massive turning point. And I'm at the age now when I'm starting to reflect on myself as to where I've been, what journey I've had from the past. And that was one of the points that I think, God, that was the moment that I changed overnight.
So let's go back to the moment of you crying, because I think we don't talk a lot about what happens when you cry, like the release of emotions, right? So your body was probably holding a lot of stuff that maybe your mind wasn't even aware of. Maybe your mind had blocked out. Yeah. Maybe you had pushed away subconsciously and your body was feeling and needed to release. You said you reflected back on that time now at your age. Looking back at it, what were you holding? What do you think you were releasing, and why do you think you were holding that? What was it that made you have all those emotions? What experiences were you going through?
You know, the last few weeks and months I've been trying to answer that question internally. I've come up with a few scenarios, but I think what makes sense to me is from childhood. You know, I was first generation of immigrants born in this country. I was the first child. My parents landed in the UK in the 60s, and I was born late 60s. And there were certain expectations. Then on top of that, I was a disabled child that they realised within about 18 months of me being born. And then, and I grew up from a generation where conversations were had about children without involving them. Today, you talk about children. Children want to get involved. Say, what are you talking about, me? What are you saying? Let me get involved in this conversation. But in those days, you sat and listened. And on top of that, some of the conversations that were had about me, not by my parents, they were fantastic. It was everybody else. I was noticing not distant relatives, others, people who used to visit the house would come out with comments which would stick with me for weeks and months.
Like what?
I mean, I've said this before on camera as well, but it's something that's still very, very powerful in terms of I was about 8 or 9 years old and I was sitting watching daytime TV, a children's program, and some aunties came to speak to my mum. And when my mum went into the kitchen to make some tea, the three aunties decided to have a conversation about me. And I was just innocently sitting there. It was all in Punjabi what they were saying, but loosely translated, it was pretty much, isn't it a shame? Who's going to marry him? Which father in their right mind would give their daughter to him? It's not something an 8 or 9 year old wants to hear.
But it meant you felt it. You understood.
I felt it, and it stayed with me.
Wow.
For the next 10 years, I thought, I'm not going to get married, which means I'm not going to have children, which means what's the point of life? Isn't it to get married, have children, and do what my parents are doing, and sit back in my old age and do what my grandparents are doing?
So it shook your whole sense of worth.
So what was I? Am I a burden now? If I'm not going to have those dreams and ambitions, which are pretty mainstream, what's my role? And for an 8 or 9 year old to hear that's not the easiest thing. And then on top of that, I'd start getting bullied at school. I went from top grade student to overnight. As soon as the bullying started, I became pretty mediocre. And so,
Because of your disability?
yeah, there's a chapter in my book called Three Little Girls. It was three little girls that decided to mimic my walk and made my journey to each lesson very, very awkward for me. Because nobody, up until that moment, no other child had ever even mentioned my disability. I was just another child to them. But these other three little girls decided to make me feel uncomfortable. And so again, that was another set of emotions I was holding. And I never went and told my parents because I didn't want to burden them. I didn't want them to think our child is upset.
Yeah.
That's just two examples of things that were happening to me, which I never complained about. I just bottled it. And so when I released it that day when I was 17 or 18, I can't pinpoint the exact year and month, but it was like it was all coming out in one go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of, I don't regret it one bit, if I'm entirely honest with you. If you say to me, would I relive it differently? If the circumstances were different, would you live it a certain way? No, I still want to go through those emotions, because if I consider myself okay today, it's because I had that journey behind me.
Wow. That's very difficult as a child to go through. And I can understand that, because I was bullied at a young age. And you start asking yourself questions, why me?
Yeah.
Why this?
Yeah.
Why did God make this happen to me? What did I do wrong? Will I ever get a girlfriend? Who will like me? I don't look like them. And you're right, it sits with you. It really, really sits with you.
Don't you find it never goes?
Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. It doesn't go. But like you, I wouldn't change it, because I love the man I am now.
Yeah.
And so you realise, and they say life never makes sense going forward, it makes sense going back. When you look back and you understand, actually, I built up a lot of resilience. I had to face and see the world a different way than other people did as a youngster. Yes, it was difficult, but look at me now, right? And a lot of the time, people who've had easier childhoods that are not necessarily the strongest men later on.
Yeah.
Because they haven't had to form themselves in those years.
Yeah, right.
So we can hold more and deal with more because that's what we knew from a young age. And, I find that really powerful to listen to you from that. And you sharing your story just, makes me reflect on my time. I didn't have that same experience of consciousness at a young age. Mine came much later.
My ex-boss, who passed away a few years ago, he said to me, if you want advice on any matter in life, ask a burdened man.
I love
somebody
that.
who's carrying a lot of rubbish.
Yeah.
They're the ones, the best people to give you advice, and I find that so true.
Well, there's something to be said about a man who's faced challenges and come out. Yeah. Those are the men who have the most powerful, most interesting stories. Yeah. They carry the wounds of their journeys. But they've got stories to tell and advice to give, and they're a lot of the time stronger for it.
Yeah.
Would you say it was around that same time when you heard those women talk about you that you realised your disabilities, or was that something that came much younger?
That disability realisation was off and on with me. When I was playing with my friends, I was never a disabled person. When I was sitting in within my safe, comfortable family environment, I was never a disabled person. It's when I met unfamiliar people or found myself in an unfamiliar environment that I became disabled. But that was temporary. That was for the short time that I was having that experience.
How did you handle that?
I learned to switch on and off. I just thought, this is it. This is me. This is my life. It's okay. So be it. What's next? And I had to realize very quickly that either I can become absorbed by whichever situation I'm finding myself in, or I've just got to say, push that to one side. What am I actually here for? What am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing in this situation? and just focus on that.
And that's something you found at a young age?
I realised at a young age that, I can remember I was 8 years old, and my dad took me to see the orthopaedic consultant, and he said, Mr. Raju, your son's got to have an operation to cut the hamstrings under both knees. And my dad looked at me thinking he's going to be upset because he's just heard this. And I was like, all right, so be it, let's just do this. At the age of 8, I've had an operation before that at the age of 5. So I knew what I was going to have. I remember it well enough. And then I had another one at the age of 11. I had another one at the age of 26.
Wow.
And so I knew, I thought, right, this is just something I've got to do. So just get on with it. Let's get past this. So it's kind of a policy I've adopted with most things. That just, if I can see a train coming towards me, I think, right, what do I do about this?
But that's the reason I'm asking you these questions is that, we all face challenges in life. Some people can let it overcome them. Other people can process it and move past it. But your way of thinking from a young age is quite mature for that age. How did you come to that realization? What was it? Something someone said to you? Do you feel you fully processed it, or do you feel you were just pushing it away, but it was always kind of lingering there?
I think some of it was I had a very strong set of parents. My father was the most calmest person ever, so I absorbed some of his serenity in his conversation. So if he'd explain, right, you're going to have this piece of surgery or this physiotherapy next week for next 6 weeks, it'd take in such a calm way that I would accept it. That, all right, that's something I've got to go through.
Yeah.
If he had said it in a very anxious way, I probably would have had a different reaction. And so I'm blessed that I had that kind of a father who, I think he had the same policy that if something's coming, let's just deal with this.
Mm. Being Punjabi, and you said you had these aunties talk about you.
Yeah.
How do you feel growing up the culture treated you?
You see, the culture, we have this thing, the Punjabis have this thing, we're so proud of our culture. We start beating our chest when you start saying, I'm Punjabi. And I think it's great. I think it's okay, fine, be proud of your roots, proud of where we've come from, and our ability to be there for each other. But when it comes to disability, it's bury your head in the sand, or it's just not there, or we'll talk about that when everybody else is out the room. And
why do you think that is?
I think, today, there are children, as I said earlier, there are children who want to get involved in an adult conversation. In those days, children were told to be seen and not heard. And so if disability was ever discussed, it was about me without me. And I got used to it. I got to a scenario where I thought, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to have. I remember one of my eureka moments was that I'm going to discuss disability openly. I'm going to talk about it and make my own community feel very uncomfortable. I'm going to say things to the community which are going to make them question their own belief system, which needs to happen because it doesn't happen enough. We're so it's almost injected into our DNA not to question our culture, our parents, our ancestry, and even our religion. And I think we've got to be able to have those mature conversations, because if we don't, then disability. I go to India every year, 2 or 3 times a year, and that's where I really feel disabled.
Why?
Why? A number of reasons. In this country, I can walk down the street and nobody will stare at me, because you see disabled people everywhere. In India, it's this. constant, everywhere I go.
And how does that make you feel?
And it used to really annoy me first, but now I just don't bother me. And I did something about 3 years ago which flipped the conversation on its head. And it wasn't something I did purposely, it's just something I thought, right, I know where I've gone with this. So I've started raising funds in the UK to donate wheelchairs to disabled people in poverty in India. And today, I think to date, we've done about 650 plus wheelchairs and hand bikes. And one of the things I said last year in my speech, in a pind,
which is a village.
In a village
Yeah.
full of there was about 400 plus people sitting there. And I said it in Punjabi, but loosely translated, I said, the message to all you people receiving wheelchairs, go out there and be proud and loud. Go out there and make noise and show everybody you're here. Don't go and take that wheelchair and go and hide in your village now. Go out there and go on those journeys so people are seeing you. So those conversations I had inside the houses in those villages. That, oh, I saw that person, he's in a wheelchair. Okay, you mean they can go out? You mean they can go and get a job? You mean they can go and live independently? Because that conversation isn't being had in India.
What does it feel like? And pardon my ignorance, but I want you to be able to communicate this. What does it feel like to be disabled? Like, what's the feeling? Because you're right, people will look, right? And we make judgments in a second, right? We can't help it. We're humans, we're meant to make judgments. That's threat or non-threat, safe or unsafe. We immediately look at someone and we create a narrative in our head. But for what does it feel like?
Okay. There's two answers to that question.
Give them both to me.
The first answer is, God, it's awful.
Why?
The first answer is based on the idea that people have treated me in a certain way most of my life. And it's been a rocky experience. And I wouldn't wish it on most people, on anyone. The second answer is, I wouldn't have it any other way. Because I like the person I have become. I like my outlook on life now. And I wouldn't have had that had I not been a disabled person.
What outlook has it given you?
It's given me a lot more empathy for my fellow human beings. I cannot see injustice. I get annoyed when there is discrimination happening in front of me. I get annoyed when there is injustice, not just around disability, but around race, around religion. If anybody is getting victimized for any reason, it winds me up. And I think to myself, had I not had the experiences I've had in life, I might have been a bit more right-wing. I'm all right, Jack, I don't care, it doesn't bother me. Why should I get involved in somebody else's misfortune?
So when you reflect back at life, what I'm sensing is that you understand why you were given this path, for you to be able to do the work that you do, right? To have the empathy, because that's how I look at my life. I look at myself, I think, if I hadn't had all these experiences, I couldn't be the man I am now and do the work I do. And then you realize, okay, this is always a way.
You've got an energy about you, which you probably wouldn't have had.
Yeah.
Had you not had the experiences you had. And that's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
2001, I had what's called a TIA, transient ischemic attack, mini stroke.
Okay.
And I was lying in hospital feeling very sorry for myself. Because from that moment onwards, I was in a wheelchair for about 3 or 4 weeks. And I could not see myself getting out of this wheelchair. And I was really moody. I can remember my wife, my family, everybody came to see me that particular day. And I thought, I was having very negative thoughts. Anyway, everybody had left me. And a hospital chaplain did a beeline for me, came and sat next to me at the bed, and I looked at her and I said, oh gosh, you're going to be here to convert me now, aren't you? And she said, no, I'm not here to convert you, but I've recognised you. I've seen you in the newspaper. I know who you are. And I just thought I'd come and say hello. I said, yeah, what? What do you want? I was being very rude to her. I'm entirely honest with you. I wasn't in the mood. But she talked to me a little bit, and she wasn't getting through. But she wasn't trying to convert me. She was just trying to make me feel a bit more positive about life. And then she said something to me which became my mantra. She goes, Amo, do you mind me saying? I mean, she quoted a passage from the Bible, which I can't recite now. But she said, if the good Lord has made you disabled, if the good Lord has given you this purpose on life, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Go out there and become king of disabled people. Go out there and be the person that they need you to be for them. And she said that, and then she left. She whizzed off. And for a few seconds, I thought, have I just had some kind of a moment where nobody? I looked around the rest of the ward as if anybody else had seen her. Was it just me imagining her being there? But that piece of advice that she gave, it stayed with me. And next day, I worked so hard in physiotherapy, and I got walking again, and suddenly gave me the kick up the backside I needed. And after that, my career shot up. I became the chief exec. I became hungry for power, hungry for success. And within the next 5-10 years, I grew my organization to have from 4 staff to something like, I think 10 years later, I had 100 staff. And it was something in me that I just thought, I know I've got a mission. And so your question, what's it like to be disabled? I think that was my purpose.
That's a beautiful realization, and what a powerful moment and experience to have. I think we all need that moment, right? That moment where you question everything, and then suddenly it all kind of makes sense, and you can reflect back on it and realize, okay, this was never meant to be any other way.
Yep.
I think a lot of people don't go through that. Yeah. They stay in that place of, the world's against me. Why did it choose me? Why did it have to happen to me? Look at everyone else, they're doing so good. Why me? But when you realize you're always meant to be you, and there's actually power in whatever state you're in, we start to claim our lives, right?
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you something else I've not shared with many people.
Please do.
I was in India 2 years earlier to that moment. And I'd gone for the first time. And, I'd gone as a child, but I couldn't remember much of that. But as an adult, this was the first time I'd gone. And so I was walking in the city. And my cousin was with me, with just the two of us. And this sadhu guy, this kind of like, looked like some holy man. He dreadlocks, the whole thing. He was wearing the shebang, and I could see him from a distance coming towards me. And everybody started clearing their path when he was coming. He was holding a big, long stick. And everybody was clearing the path as if they were scared of him. And I didn't know who he was. I thought, why should I clear my path? And he got near to me, and he got his stick, and he whacked it across my leg. I thought, I was young and I thought, I'm going to have him. Not that I could have, but I thought, what's all that about? And my cousin looked at me, he goes, no, don't say anything. Come on, let's go. And he goes, and he pointed to me, he goes, stay there. I mean, I said all this in Punjabi, but I'm saying in English, he goes, stay there. And he goes, you've got a big purpose in life. Wow. I said, yeah. I thought, okay, he's after a bit of money. He's going to give me my fortune now. But then he said things about what was going to happen to me in the next 5-10 years. And he said, as soon as you go back, you're going to get a promotion, which happened. You're going to become very successful. You're going to become ill, but you're going to become very successful after that. He actually said I was going to become a politician, which I did. He actually talked about my music background, which I had a music background. And I thought to myself, this is pre-Google days. He couldn't have Googled who I was. So, but the fact that he said, he goes, you're going to be something special for the community that you are going to serve. And I look back and I think, God, he must have seen something. I don't know.
Did you believe him when he said
At the time, I didn't believe a word of him.
Why not?
But one thing he said to me, he goes, because I said to him, I'm coming back next year, because I knew I was going to come back next year. He goes, you can come back. He goes, I'm going to be dead. He had predicted his own death. And he had died the next year. When I went next year, he was dead. They said, oh, he's died. He died a few months ago.
Wow. Were you ready to hear that?
Hey?
Were you ready to hear that?
What about the prediction of my success?
Because they say the greatest men question their own worth, right? And it's knowing, is that moment of actually knowing that you can do it.
At the time, I was in my late 20s, so I wasn't ready to hear any kind of prediction about, I didn't believe in fortune tellers. I wasn't very spiritual as a person. At the time, I just thought, he's another sadhu who's made a prediction about something or the other. Now, he doesn't know me, and I'll probably never see him again. So it didn't mean much. It was just a few years later that I reflected on the conversation that I'd had with him. And I thought, good God, that guy was onto something.
So you didn't go back home thinking, that's it, life's going to start? No.
No, good God, no.
Wow.
No. Literally, as soon as I landed, a few days later in my office, they announced that the CEO's job was up. And I thought, I didn't even think, that's what he said I was going to go. I just went for it.
So you're the CEO and the company was called?
The company it was called Disability Direct. It was a charity, which I was one of the founding staff, but I wasn't. My ex-boss, he'd founded it, and I was his kind of protege. But he decided to step down, and long story short, I ended up running it for the next 30 years.
And how did you find having the responsibility of running Disability Direct?
The responsibility. See, I didn't see it as a responsibility. I saw it as a job, as a mission. I saw it as, this was mine. I hadn't amounted to much. I didn't have any qualifications. I didn't have an apprenticeship behind me that I could fall on. I'd landed into this organization as a volunteer, trying to get some skills in the office. But as soon as he said that he was going to step down and I saw the CEO's role, I thought, this is something that's going to become mine now. And so for the next 30 years, it was mine. I did everything about it. I stepped down September 2024 as CEO. And I left it into a very strong, it's probably one of the most strongest organizations in the Midlands, charity-wise. And I thought I've fulfilled my mission in that aspect. Because the last couple of years, I'd started to resonate. My story had started to resonate with more people nationally. People nationally and internationally wanted to know who was Amo Raju. What's this guy all about? And I started feeling that it was unfair on the charity, that my name was becoming bigger than the organization.
Wow. And
so that I reached a decision I sat down with the board and said, let me exit this way. I'm still their ambassador. I do things, I do TV interviews and everything, and it's still all branded for Disability Direct, and so whatever I do is still
serves.
The story is still links back to them, but people want to talk to me about me now. They seem to think that I've got a powerful story, and the next generation of disabled people are contacting me on a daily basis, wanting to say, what you went through, I'm going through now. Can you give me a bit of advice on it?
When we spoke on our Zoom call before the podcast, we went through your story, and you had mentioned how you've shared a lot of this, Disability Direct. You've had interviews, you've had podcasts, and people know that about you. But you, on this conversation, wanted to tap into a side of your life that hadn't been discussed and you thought was really powerful. And we'll come on to Disability Direct a little bit more, because you've got an OBE, the work you've done is phenomenal. But there's a part of your life that many people don't know, right? Which was you getting married.
Yeah.
And you married against caste. You married against the approval of families where your disability was seen as a disadvantage, but you and your partner had the courage, your wife had the courage to stay true. And you ended up eloping, right?
We certainly did.
So tell me about that.
You see, I'll go back to that original comment I made at the beginning where I said I started to make bold decisions.
Yeah.
Now, I remember hearing a conversation from my parents I was about 17, where they said, shall we get him married in India? And I thought to myself, no, you won't. There's no chance you're going to get me married in India. I didn't say it to them, I wouldn't dare.
Yeah.
But I just thought to myself, it's not happening. And that even, I believe that even known somebody who had a girl in New Delhi. And I thought, it's not happening. Call it divine intervention or something, but I just joined a band. I started singing. I couldn't sing to save my life at that time.
Yeah.
But I just needed to do something rebellious against the community, against expectation. So I joined a band, I started singing, and I saw this girl at the back of the crowd. And I thought, God, she's gorgeous. And the next day, I mean, I said that in my mind while I was singing, and I forgot my words. Yeah. And the band wasn't too happy about me for forgetting the words, but I soon got back into the song. Anyway, at the end of the performance, I went around looking for her, but she'd gone home. So I went to college next day, and I sat in the common room waiting. I thought, she's got to be here somewhere.
Oh, was this at college?
It was at college.
Right. Okay.
And she ended up coming out of a lesson, and I asked her out, and she said no.
Really?
She said, no, go away. I don't want to know you. So I chased her for the next 2 years.
Okay.
I sat there annoyingly in common room every day saying, I even said to her, I'm going to marry you.
Really?
I was that bold and confident. I said, you watch, I'm going to marry you. And she laughed. All her mates laughed. All my mates laughed. It's not going to happen, mate. She doesn't want to know you. And then I did start to give up, but slowly she kind of came round, and it ended up being a very serious relationship. But we realised there was an elephant in the room. You know, 2 elephants in the room. One was she was a higher caste, and the other one was, well, I'm a disabled person. And I recalled the aunties' conversation. You know, would her father be crazy enough to give his daughter to a no-hoper like me, you know, a wannabe singer? And we had a conversation between each other, and we decided that it was just wasn't going to happen, that the families were just not going to agree. So we made that decision and we eloped. We lived in Derby, and we eloped 15 miles away to Nottingham. That's the most I could afford. So we stayed there for 4 years and we got married.
The family didn't speak to you?
My family came around within weeks and months. You know, it wasn't they were against her, they were against it was the shame of what happened. Just
to explain that, in Asian culture, Indian culture, marrying outside of your caste used to be...
I'm talking late 80s, yeah. It was a no-go.
Yeah, and still sometimes it's about now, but I'm hoping very rarely now. But
today you see a lot of intercaste marriages, and God bless them, I say. But in those days, it just did not happen. Mm. And on top of that, she'd marry a disabled teenager who had no hope, no skills, no job, nothing. He was in a band. He was well known for it. I just signed a record contract, and so I was buzzing.
What do you think she saw in you?
I don't know. This day, you need to do a podcast with her about that one, because to this day I still don't know why she married me.
I think she probably sensed who you could be and who you're going to become.
Well, I don't know. She's always felt the energy about me that I couldn't see myself. She may have been, you know, attracted to the confidence and bold decision making that I had. I was confident. I said to her, "You watch, I'll get you a car, I'll get you a house, I'll get you to do that. No, just bear with me."
Let me ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
Why did you think you needed to say that to prove your worth?
Because I felt myself that, good God, what have I just taken on? She'd come from a background where she had everything she wanted. Her parents had brought her up very lovingly and given her everything she needed. And here we were living in a council house. Do you
think she needed that, or she just needed you?
I think it was just me trying to. I think I was saying it for my own benefit more than her.
Which is a mistake a lot of men make.
We do.
We think women want these things and they want you.
Yeah, you're spot on.
And we try to put all this other stuff around it, and it ends up becoming a fog, and the men get lost in it. And really, the woman's saying, "All I want is you, dude."
Yeah. She didn't care about any of that stuff.
Exactly.
Today even, I'm doing okay today, but she's the only one that says, you know what? Even if we ended up back in a council house with nothing, we're still together.
Sign of a good partner.
It's a bit embarrassing me. That frightens the pants off me. Like, oh, good God, I don't want to go back to those days. But I think that's sign of her strength and my weakness as a human being. But yeah, it was tough days because, as I said, my family came around pretty fast. Hers just could not accept who I was. How did
that make you feel?
You know what? I felt her pain more than I felt my own, because I'd got my family back. She hadn't got hers. And it wasn't until 2012 that her mum and dad were accepting of her again.
How many years was that then?
So, what are it? With me maths now, so it's 1987 to 2012. So that's what, 25 years there.
So for 25 years, you knew that. How did you carry that every day?
It was a heavy burden. I think that was one of the reasons I wanted to work hard to give her even more, so that I was trying to replace her pain with things, with look at the nice house we're getting, look at the car I'm buying, and that's not what she needed. She needed a husband to be there, and I probably wasn't there as much as I should have been. And I was too busy engrossed in my day job. I was trying to make a name for myself, trying to prove the world wrong that this disabled guy can amount to something. That I almost forgot that Mrs. Raju was missing a husband. And so when she got her parents back, there was a huge internal sigh of relief for me. But then something else started inside me. And it was a strange feeling, as if, okay, she's got her parents back, I've got my parents back. Now there's something wrong with me. Why don't they want me? If they've accepted their daughter,
oh, they hadn't accepted you yet?
Oh God, no, they didn't want to know who I was.
Oh, right, okay.
Her mother had passed away soon after, and her father, over the next 4 or 5 years, slowly coming back into. In fact, I went round his house a couple of times, and we even watched cricket together. And he'd come to my house, so it was starting to happen, and I could see that it was going okay. But then he developed Alzheimer's, and part of it, I think, he regressed back to a time when he didn't like me. Didn't like who I was and who I'd become. So I backed off completely. I stayed away. I didn't want to know. Her siblings weren't too pleased about me getting involved in the family either, which is a strange thing considering they're my generation. And that bit is still kind of doesn't sit comfortably with me. But I've moved on. It's another obstacle which I've just parked to one side, and I'm going to move forward in my own life. If that's a loss that they have to feel rather than me.
How do you process that? I know you said that you've explained that you just park it to the side.
there's times when it's difficult. You know, one of the biggest punishments you can give to somebody is to make them feel like they don't exist. And as far as they're concerned, I don't exist. You know, it got to a stage when her father passed away a year ago. She was told explicitly, he's not coming to the funeral. And,
Wow.
you know, the children were welcome. She was welcome, but I wasn't. And it makes you feel that after I've done all I've done, after I've achieved all I've achieved, I've tried to prove all I can to the world that I am as good as, if not better in some aspects than most people. I'm still not good enough for you.
So upon your reflections of life, why do you think this was the way you had to be treated?
I think that's their journey. That's, you know, I accepted that they made their decision. I'll respect their decision, but that's their journey. That's when they meet the maker. That's a conversation they have to have with the maker, not me. I was there. I mean, truth is, my wife smuggled me into the hospital 2 days before he passed away, and he raised his hand at me and gave me a blessing, and that was all I needed. So I've made peace with me. I was the happiest man on earth that day that I'd seen him before he passed, and so that's, as I say, that's a journey for them.
But I think it probably makes you even more empathetic of people having experienced it and knowing what it feels like, right? Because how can you help others if you don't understand their pain?
Yeah, and as I say, today I will come across people who are going through something similar.
Yeah.
Family tensions or being ignored because they're disabled, having their feelings completely put to one side and decisions being made about them. So I empathise with what they're going through, because I say one of the greatest punishments you can dish out on another being is to make out they don't exist, their feelings and their thoughts don't exist.
So what kept your guys' relationship strong during that time, when you knew that there was family disputes and stuff? What kept you guys solid? Because that can weigh heavy on you both, right?
I was too engrossed in my mission in life. I think all the strength came from Mrs. Raju.
Oh.
I think she was the one who held us together. She's the glue. The last 2 years I've spent more time with her than I have in my whole life, because I'm no longer working a day job.
Mm.
And I've started to appreciate the role she's played in my life. I've started to appreciate it much more.
Why do you think men don't appreciate?
We don't, because we seem to think that they're don't worry, when I get home, she's there. She's going to look after me. She's going to put me right. She's going to put me straight.
That's a heavy weight for a woman to carry.
It is. Something else happened in our life, though. 10 years ago, Mrs. Raju was diagnosed with MS. So her impairment, which is very invisible compared to mine, it started weighing on me that I need to become a different person now. You know, less about my disability. We say things to each other now. We say the same thing constantly. You know, we're both disabled, but we make one fit and able person together. You know, there's things I can do that she can't. There's things that she can do that I can't. And together we're one solid human being, physically.
Well, you guys, when you walked in, I could see your energies. I could feel it. It's right. It's true. It's real. I think it's a beautiful story, because you shared the story of how you guys met earlier, and I said how amazing and what a wonderful way to share how you guys first met and saw each other in a time when people, you know, say, "Oh, I've saw him on a dating app," and it's just flick. You had this magical moment.
You know, Naroop, there's something I feel very sorry for this next generation, and I've heard this a lot of people in their 20s and 30s particularly. They'll go on these apps where they're swiping, and even if they do eventually meet each other, they'll still work out what caste is that person. because they know they've got to go back and have a conversation with the parents. And when I hear, nowadays you go to all these weddings, these Asian weddings, and they say, "Oh, is it a love marriage, or is it arranged?" Most of the time, it's love marriage now. But I say it's not love, because a lot of the times they're getting married to the same caste, and all they've done is arrange their own marriage, because they've said, "What caste are you?" And you can see it. And I know of couples who have split up as soon as they've found out what their castes are.
So what is a love marriage?
A love marriage is when you look beyond everything. There's looks and height, color, religion, faith, background doesn't exist. It's I connect with that person, and you will be my husband, you will be my wife, and it's straight away it's going to happen. You'll move heaven and earth to make it happen.
You guys, it's almost like it's a movie, right? It could be an Indian film about your relationship and how you went against your family to be together. If you were to describe to someone what it means to love someone as a man, men rarely talk about what does love really mean. How would you describe what love means for a partner?
Oh God, that's a good question, and I'm probably the wrong person to ask.
I think you're the right person.
It's an interdependence. No person is complete on their own. You need a yang to your yin and a yin to your yang. You need someone to put you right, to put you straight, and to put you wrong sometimes. You need someone to otherwise we go through life, if life was a straight road all the way and no person, man or woman, had any interference along the way, what's a boring life? You need someone to make it slightly bumpy and rocky, and when you're going over those bumps and through those rocks together, you only get tighter and stronger together.
Yeah.
And by the time you've reached the end, your biggest fear is, I don't want to leave you behind. And what's going to happen to you? Me and Mrs. Raju have this conversation regularly. She gets wound up now because I'm starting to make my plans about, when I'm no longer here, you've got to do A, B, C, and D. And she's saying the same thing. Well, if I'm not here, you've got to be doing E, F, G, and H.
Yeah. And
it's like, that's the most depressing conversation, because one of us is going to be left without the other. And I'm terrified. I always hope I go first, because I don't want to imagine a life on my own.
You said something, and I agree with it. Like, when you're with the right person, adversity brings you closer, not further apart. A lot of relationships, adversity brings people apart. You know you're with the wrong person. I listened to this song recently. There's a woman called Janavi Harrison. She sings like devotional music.
Okay.
And she's got a song, and it's called I Trust You. There's a song to the universe, I trust you, right? So I know everything's working out in the way it should. And then the last line she says is, accept me as I am, right? And she sings it in such a beautiful way, but it holds such power that if you love someone, you accept them as they are. You don't ask them to change. You say, I love all of you. I don't just love this part of you. I love every bit of you. And I don't want you to change. I want you to be you. Yeah. And I think that's actually so fitting for you as a man. You got accepted as you are. Yeah. And you built this beautiful love and this beautiful relationship. And I just think that for me, well, here's two men talking about love, right? But that for me is love. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so rare. I think I was saying to you guys earlier that men do it, women do it too. We treat love with such, we're so reckless with it. Yeah. You're spot on. You're so reckless with it. When you meet someone who you actually connect with, it's the most beautiful thing. You're so delicate, and when you really love someone, the last thing you'd ever want to do is hurt them, to say anything that would hurt them. But we're so wasteful with our words. Sometimes we don't appreciate it though, while we're in the moment. Yeah. It's whilst you're living it, you just take it for granted. Yeah. And that's been my issue. Yeah. I'll openly admit that
I haven't been there when I needed to be there. You know, I've been sidetracked. And so,
But you realised it, man. That's the difference.
yeah,
a lot of men
I'm owning
don't.
it now. I'm owning it. It's something I'll have to come to terms with in my old age, that I've missed a whole batch of years in my life.
Yeah. So what has the relationship taught you about patience, love, and identity? What would you, if you were to try to teach someone from your learnings of that whole relationship, what would you share?
Talk and open up more to your partner. One thing I didn't do, I mean, it's well known now that I'm an advocate of men's mental health. But for 30 years, I didn't tell anybody that I was going through severe depression. Not even Mrs. Raju knew that I disappeared every now and then and spoke to a therapist. And I wish I had talked to her more about it. Because men, we want to be the strong provider. You know, I'm the oldest son. I was a CEO. I was a father and a husband. I was an older sibling. I had to be the one that everybody comes to with issues. But I never sat my wife down and said, I'm going through something myself. And I wish I had done that, because I probably wouldn't have had half the mental torture that I'd had
So
all
why
those
didn't
years.
you?
Sorry?
Why didn't you?
Because I thought it was a sign of weakness. I wanted to be the provider for her. I wanted to be the person that she could lean on. And the minute I accepted that I need help myself, then I was no longer ticking all those boxes as the person who beats his chest, saying I'm the man in the room. I'm the one that's going to sort out all your problems. And so I kept it to myself. It was just me and the therapist knew what was going on in my head. Therapy is, for me, good therapy is not where you're sitting in front of someone and they're telling you what to do. I just needed an opportunity to offload. And the therapist, and you're probably getting wound up the same way my therapist used to get wound up. I never made eye contact with her. I'd look at everywhere around the room. And I'd never sit there and say to her, this is what's going on in my life. I'd look around at the vase or a fish tank or something else. Or I had this really bad habit of staring out the window. For the first few sessions, she used to look at me going, what's going on behind me? And I do this regularly because I just didn't want to make eye contact with anybody and say, I've got this problem.
Why, shame?
It's because I didn't want to talk to a human being. I didn't want another human being to know I'm weak. I could easily tell a vase or a fish tank.
What were you weak? What was the weakness you thought you had?
The weakness was that I was feeling small. That even though I was, particularly in the latter parts, in the last decade of therapy, that I was one of the most successful CEOs in the city where I lived. But I was scared.
Of?
Failure. I was scared of, I was a nervous wreck before I'd have to go and do a speech, even though everybody would give me the biggest round of applause when I did it. I was scared of people taking my position. I was, all the things a CEO feels. I was scared of going home and not being able to look after my parents when they needed me. I was scared of not being able to provide for my children. I'd have flashbacks back to a time where me and my wife had nothing to eat and we ate Rice Krispies with margarine. That's the only food we could add in the house. Wow. We had no food, no money. Those kind of things used to keep coming flashbacks and haunting me, and they'd make me feel very, very small, insignificant and powerless. I needed power. I needed to be in a powerful position I needed to be a control freak about any situation I found myself in, so that I could not be in a vulnerable position. And the only person I could offload that to was somebody who I didn't know, a therapist.
So where do you think that stemmed from? Childhood?
The insecurity. No, it stemmed from from experience. The experiences that I had, the negative experiences that I had. Whilst I was having them, I just thought, okay, I'm having these experiences, they're really bad. But once I'd moved on and overcome them, I never wanted to go back to them, and they'd make me shake every time I thought about them. And so I felt weak just at the thought of not having my own house, having to live in a council house with no money. I felt weak at the thought of not being able to pay for my child's school trip.
But why was that not a motivation? Why did that turn into a weakness?
It was a fear. It was this fear that what I'm doing, me being a CEO and being successful is all a dream. That someday I'm going to wake up and it's not happened. That I'm back where I was, and that made me feel very insecure.
So how did therapy help you see that?
Therapy, she just listened, and as I say, she never gave me advice. She'd divert the conversation sometimes. The first therapy session, very, very first one back in 93, yeah. It was very typical. It was almost scripted from a movie, where she started asking me about my mum. I thought, yeah, you're going to blame me on my mother now, are you? I'm like this because my mother's, and she giggled as well. She goes, no, it's not that. I didn't even believe in therapy. That first session, I was prescribed it by the GP because I wanted antidepressants, and they said, no, you've got to have therapy sessions instead. By the way, to this day, I haven't taken an antidepressant. I've believed in talking now. At the end, in 2019 was the last therapy session I had with her, and she made me realise, that was my second eureka moment, that I'm getting these feelings of weakness and anxiety and hurt and frustration because I'm allowing myself to react to other people again. If other people are saying things or being a certain way with me, then I need to move past that. I need to start thinking about what are my purposes in life. That's the moment when I started, because we soon went into lockdown after that, and that's when I started writing my book. And that's when I realised that it's good for men to talk, and the more men talk, and that's all I've been saying to people now.
What does talking do for men, in your opinion? Because it sounds so easy. It's good to talk.
Yeah.
But I think that's...
if I say to you and me, let's go for a pint, and, we'll talk about everything except our feelings.
Yeah, which is what happens.
Do you see the football last night?
Yeah.
Do you see the cricket? Do you see the boxing? But if my wife goes for a drink with her friend, within seconds, they're offloading. And if you started a conversation with me and I started a conversation with you, guess what's pissing me off? We're offloading without realising it. We can have the same conversation in a masculine way. There's no reduced testosterone levels by us saying it that way.
But why is it not masculine to say, I'm feeling really scared, I'm feeling fearful? Is that not masculine?
It is, but there's an expectation by others that what are you on about?
Yeah. So it's people's reactions which create fear in us not to share, right?
Yeah. It's a reaction. Yeah. It's a fear that how will that person react if they see me a certain way? And I remember, only a couple of months ago, I went for a drink with a friend of mine, and I was having a bad patch, and he knew I was having a bad patch. And he had a go at me. He goes, why didn't you talk to me? That's something he would never have said years earlier. But he's read my book.
That's interesting.
And he's realised that it's okay for a bloke to ask another bloke to say, why are you talking to me?
Yeah. I think men need to be, they There needs to be more education around how men listen and how men show up. Because what I've found now, interestingly, in my life, is the version I am now, as we're always evolving as men, is so different to the version I was before, that when I am now around people who I was before, I am no longer me.
Yeah.
And I'm now having to revert back to a lower frequency version of Naroop just so they can relate to me and I can relate to them. I'm not saying I'm any better,
No.
but my true form, my true self, I cannot be all the time.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting feeling to have. Because then I question who I can be around different people. And I just want to be me, but I realize that there's different states of consciousness. There's different states of understanding.
You're right.
There's different states of purpose. And not everyone's going to understand that.
Mm.
Right? So what that shows is the circle you put yourself around. Not saying the old circle is wrong, it's not. But you grow.
Yeah.
And then you realize that I'm here now and I want to show up like this. I want to be me in my true form, which is why, we've started our meetup groups and our events, and you realize you start being around men who are more similar. And then you question yourself thinking, what about the people I always knew, man? I still love them.
We as human beings, we wake up in the morning, brush our teeth, and we put a mask on.
Yep.
I've just learned not to wear the mask anymore. And it annoys people sometimes because it's like, you're really that arrogant. You're really that confident. You're full of yourself, aren't you? But I said, this is me now. I'm still a bit of a power freak. I'm still a bit of a control freak. I'm still a bit of an idiot. But this is me. You're going to get the real Amo. The mask is no longer there. I own all my insecurities. I own all my successes now. I'm not ashamed of it anymore. I went through a stage, probably it's only been about a year. I was embarrassed of my success.
Why is that?
Because it annoyed other people. People go, he's won another award. Oh God, okay, yeah. It's not my fault. But now I thought, if I've won an award, somebody's seen something in me.
Of course.
Yeah. If my story has resonated with an organisation, then I'm going to shout about it. I'm no longer embarrassed about who I am now. And I'm going back to that point I made. I am going to be king of disabled people as long as I live. I'm going to keep going there, making that noise. I'm not going to shy away from it, because that's the mask that everybody wants me to wear. They want to keep you in that box, put the lid on and say, we'll bring you out when it suits us. That's not how I want to be anymore.
How did you feel when you were driving back from Buckingham Palace having received an OBE?
I felt that my journey was coming to an end. I thought, what, does it get any bigger than this?
How much work had you done to receive the OBE? Like, what had you done that they had seen that you were deserving of it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, as I say, I was so busy doing my job. To say that the charity that I'd been running, I'd become very successful, self-reliant, generating its own income. But along the way, I was making noise. I was making noise on behalf of my peers, my disabled people, that I was supposed to be representing. I was bringing in services for the city. I started the book that I'd just published had catapulted me into a national profile rather than local and regional. And so somebody must have, the powers that be may have read it, or, I remember going to the palace and King Charles was supposed to present me with the EB, but just a few days earlier he was diagnosed with cancer, so he couldn't do it. But Princess Anne stepped in. And it was brilliant because I walked up to her and she knew everything about me. But there was a long queue of people in front of me. And so part of me was thinking, has she got an earpiece? Somebody telling her, feeding her. But she knew all everything about me, and she was reciting things. And I was like gobsmacked. So, and she was saying things like, well, you've done this for the charity, you've raised this much money. And so I thought, okay, well, if you must have realised why I've got it, you know why I've got this now. So, but we was driving home that from, my mum was with me, and my wife was. My dad had just passed away 6 weeks earlier, so we were still very emotional. But Mrs. Raju looked at me, and we were driving, and she said, "I hope you're not going to sit on your backside now.
Yeah.
Go and do something good with this." And I thought, what else do you want me to do? But she had a point that I've been elevated onto this platform now. I've been given this very, very prestigious award by, the royal family. It doesn't get bigger than that in this country. So I started looking at, well, if I can make some even more noise now, people will listen. One of the things I wanted to do was to donate these wheelchairs internationally to particularly the Punjab. So I started raising funds, and I'm using my profile to make some noise that inequality is everywhere. It's not just in the UK, it's across the world. And the Punjab particularly, India is seen as a fast-growing economy. But when it comes to disability, they're in the medieval ages. So we've got work to do. And I thought, if I can do anything to progress that conversation, maybe that's the next purpose in life.
So is that where you want to put your focus now?
It's one of my focuses. Because this may sound a bit arrogant, but it doesn't take me much effort to raise the money. I put a call out 2 days ago online for donations. I've already got pledges of over £5,000, which will buy me around 100 wheelchairs.
Wow.
So that bit takes very little effort. What I want to do is make the noise around injustice, around disability.
What is the injustice?
The injustice is still relevant. The day I stepped down as CEO in 2024, a journalist asked me a question. They said, over your 30 years tenure as CEO of this charity, what's changed? How's the world got better for disabled people? And I said, it hasn't, it's got worse. I said, I've seen legislation come in. I've seen rights, pushed in front of disabled people, like, right, your life's going to be better now. You should achieve equality. I said, hate crime amongst disabled people is higher than ever.
Why is that?
Because we're in a world where you can go online and say the most obnoxious comments around disability and not face any consequences. I get asked regularly by journalists, can you put us in touch with a disabled person to talk about benefits cuts? I says, I'll try. Because the minute I do, they'll post their story online, and that disabled person gets abuse as a benefit scrounger,
wow,
as a burden on the state, that kind of stuff. And so that didn't happen 30 years ago. That's happening now. It's happening more than ever.
Why do you think there is that feeling towards disabled people? Why is there still, in a world where we have so much knowledge, we're shown everything, we're meant to treat people equally, why do disabled people still feel this shame?
I think the issue for me is that there hasn't been enough role models is the thing now. I grew up in an era where I could switch the TV on and there was no disabled person to be seen on there. There's very few brown people to be seen there. But today we've got disabled people on the TV, on Coronation Street, in EastEnders. We need disabled people in this country to be in powerful positions. I've made this point. Every successive government, since I can remember, has had a post called Minister of Disabled People. how many of them were disabled people themselves?
Mm.
And if you're saying, well, okay, there's not enough MPs who are disabled, then what you're doing about it? What you're doing about encouraging disabled people to enter politics?
Is it the lived experience you think that's important?
The lived experience is the most powerful way of getting, a conversation going, a true conversation. There's a saying within the disability movement, which has been adopted by all movements. They say nothing about us without us, and that's more relevant than ever.
Well, what's the difference with someone not being disabled, having that role, but having advisors or a focus group that they can talk to disabled people? What makes it more important?
I'm of the opinion that you don't have to be a disabled person.
Mm.
You could have a lived experience by having if you've got a family member where there's disability in the household, you will still have a lived experience. You will know the injustice that loved one is going through.
Mm.
But even if you haven't, even if you got a minister who's, or any person in a powerful position who wants to make a decision about disability, you can involve disabled people in that and not as a rubber stamping group.
Mm.
True co-production, where you're saying, I've got this idea, can you go and design it? Not I'll design it with you. You go and design it how you want this service delivered to you. Mm. If you say I'll design it with you, you're going to influence their process. Co-production works to some extent, but it's got to be totally produced by the disabled person.
Mm.
And that's the only way you're going to start to see change. And back to my point about role models, when there are more disabled people out there in the media, in powerful positions, in companies, in senior roles, that's when you're going to start to see changes.
When someone is disabled, what is the greater pain for them? Is it the physical limitation or the mental? The thoughts that people are looking at them, the how they feel about themselves?
I can only give you my experience and the experiences that I've shared with others who have shared with me.
Yeah.
And 99% of their time, their own impairment doesn't bother them. It's everyone's reaction, the environment's reaction. I've said this point so many times. Companies years ago got fixated by spending hundreds of thousands of pounds putting ramps and lifts into their buildings. Mm. But I've said every penny was wasted if the reception person had a negative attitude towards that individual when they walk through the door.
Wow. And
that still goes on today. You can go into a building, you can go into any company, and they'll say, we've got a great disability policy. It all goes out the window if you're discriminating against your own employees, or if your service is no longer geared towards your customers. I've always said this, and I say this to all. I do a lot of mentoring to CEOs across the UK, and the first thing I say to them is, whichever company you're based in, it should reflect, the makeup of that company should reflect the community it serves and it wishes to serve. If you're living in an environment, working in an environment where you've got a strong, diverse community around you, but all your staff are white, middle-aged men, you're limiting yourself. And that happens too often.
What is disabled, right? Like, who is to say that there's people who are able and disabled? Like, what is true ability? Because really, if we think about it, it's here, right?
Yeah.
There's people who are wheelchair bound. Does it mean that they're not able to be of much as same value as everyone else? And what is true value, right? Makes you question everything about being a human.
I'll quote you a line from my book. Disability is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
And it's simply because I can remember there was a meeting, I'm going back many years, but it sticks out with me because I had a giggle when it happened. I was annoyed, but I also had a giggle. There was a woman doing a presentation in a meeting, and I was in the crowd, And she said she asked for a volunteer to assist her on something. I can't remember what it was. She was doing some kind of presentation. And I said, I'll volunteer. I think I like the subject matter she was talking about. And she announced me, the good-looking gentleman over there. And so I got up and I walked in, and you could see she was smiling, but as she saw me walk, she went, her face went complete disgust. And I started giggling as I walked up. I thought, am I still good looking to you?
Oh, wow.
But that says everything about what's wrong with society.
Wow. You've been through so much, man, and you still smile.
I think I'm ready for another day of crying at some stage. It's probably going to come out at some stage.
Well, I was going to ask you, you had these 2 stages of awakening. What have you learned from your first to your second?
That I cannot control, I cannot change other people. I can sit. So I do a lot of disability equality training. I do race training. And I'll have a crowd of people in a room listening to every word I say. And they'll sit there, they're nodding, oh yeah, he's right. And then as soon as they're walking out, they're saying something ignorant again. And I think to myself, I can spend as much time as I want with you, but I can't change your attitude. There's again, I've mentioned this before many times, but there was an incident in the news. Many will remember it, when an ex-England football manager got sacked because he said disability is a result of something you did in your last life. He got sacked by the FA pretty much overnight for saying that. I was sitting in a room full of aunties and uncles, and it was on the news, and then they asked me to say, they said, Kaka, what's he saying? And I explained this in English. I said, this is what he's saying. And they go, yeah, he's right. Why is he getting sacked for? He's right. And I could not, for the life of me, explain to them why he was wrong. Because for thousands of years, it's been injected into their DNA that I'm disabled because I did something wrong in my last life.
Like it's a punishment.
It's a punishment. So I'm not going to persuade these guys. And so if for thousands of years you cannot change a community overnight, a 3-hour workshop with me talking about disability isn't going to change these people.
But is it a community thing, or is it just a global thing?
It's global.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. You go to. I've had the good fortune over the last 2 years. I've been to many countries when I do keynote speeches now and stuff. That everywhere you go, people are saying the same thing, and that's where I realised, even though 15% of the world is disabled by society, 15%.
Wow, didn't realise it was so high. 15%
of the world. That 15% is getting totally ignored. And I'll say this thing, people only, that remaining 85% only think about disability when it's happened to them themselves.
Yeah.
Every person on the planet is going to be affected at some stage. And it's too late to say, you know what, I'm going to change the world now because suddenly I'm feeling it now. I think, too late. I get really... My wife thinks I'm very, very rude like this. Sometimes I have people come up to me and say, I've just been diagnosed with something and I'm really bad. I saw, this is another true story. 1985, 86, I wanted to go to a nightclub, and as I walked up, this bouncer was on the front. Big guy, stocky. You wouldn't mess with him. He goes, you're not coming in. And I thought, am I wearing trainers? No, I'm not wearing trainers. He goes, you're too drunk. I wasn't drunk. He looked at my walk and realised this guy's not walking straight. couple of my mates had a giggle.
Yeah.
And we all decided we're not going in there now. But I was annoyed. I was so damn annoyed. Move the clock forward 10 years. In my role at Disability Direct, I was filling forms, I was doing benefits forms. That same bouncer walked in on crutches.
Wow.
And he walked in, sat down. He didn't recognise me, he didn't know who I was, but I recognised him. You don't forget a big bloke like that and that experience. And he sat down in front of me and he goes, I've got to have my foot amputated. I didn't feel sorry for him. I said, now you're going to know what it's like. I felt bad afterwards, years later, but at that moment, I thought, you're going to know what my life has been like. You're going to get a small dose of what I've gone through. But then when they start to try and adjust in the world of disabled people, I don't have the patience that I should have, because I've lived it from birth. The injustices I felt from birth. When they get confused, well, I don't like this, I'm getting treated really badly. And I'm saying, well, you were part of the problem, now you need to be part of the solution now. Stop getting wound up, and they get themselves wound up because they know no other life. And I should feel more empathetic towards them, to their situation. But I'm not. I'm saying that's a journey you're going to have to take now. You know, you'll fall over on the way, get back up like I had to. I'm not gonna be there for you every time, but you've got to have that journey. I've not seen that bouncer since. I don't know where he is, but I did feel at that small, short moment a sense of justice, which is wrong. I know it's very wrong.
No, it's a reaction, right? We carry this stuff. I remember stuff from my childhood when I was mistreated, and I think back to it doesn't go.
Yeah.
How would disabled people like to be treated? Let's say, because sometimes the problem is we can be too careful because we don't want to offend, and by being that way, you actually do offend. So, what is the best way to be? Just to be yourself?
I think everybody just needs to be everybody. Everybody needs to be get on with life. For me, I know, and I know many disabled people feel the same way. They don't want to be the subject in the room. They want to be part of the room. And what I mean by that is, if you've got a question that, why does that person walk like that? Why does that person in a wheelchair, why is that person a certain way? The only way you're going to find out is if you're going to come talk to me. Amo, why do you walk like that? I'm not going to jump on you and give you a good bashing. I'm going to think, oh, well, it's like this. And the best example is children. Little children are innocent. They'll come to me. I was in a doctor's waiting room a couple of years ago, and I walked in, and this child goes to me, Mummy, why does he walk like that? And you could see the mother's look of pure horror. Shh, shh. And I said, come here. And I said, I've got a disability, and that means I walk a certain way. And he just goes, oh, and he walked off. And I thought, that child asking me was what I want. I want more and more people just to be up front and say, then you're educated. Remember, as I said to you, my friends when I was young, they didn't see my disability. It's because I grew up with them. I was in their classroom. I was an idiot just like they were. We were getting told off for the same things. We were, It was only years later when my book came out, 2021. I met an old school friend. He goes, you know what? I didn't even realise you were disabled when he read it.
So interesting.
And it's because if we're there, if we're in people's faces and they're in our faces, what you think exists no longer exists. It's not there. It's only our own kind of fears that make us think a certain way.
That's interesting, because I had the opposite experience, because I was teased and bullied a lot for my eye condition when I was at school. and they really offends. Well, I call offends some of the boys, and some of the boys' school really made me feel low. And as I've grown into a man, into an adult, I don't face that now at all.
Yeah.
But if I ever bump into one of them, they will look at me in the same way they used to when I was a kid.
Really?
They will look between my eyes. I can see their eyes going, and I go back that child again.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the opposite, where I feel the same as I did when I was young, because no one makes me feel like that now. Luckily, I don't see any of them too often, but when I have, the same inner child comes out. My confidence.
You're describing something that I used to feel many moons ago, many years ago. But as soon as I started owning the situation, owning me, they can look at me whichever way they want. There's times when I used to be talking to people and they'd be staring at my legs.
Yeah.
You know, why is his feet pointing slightly inwards? You know, you're talking to me about something very serious, but you're fixated on my feet. But now I'm just saying, I'll just start looking at their feet when they're looking at mine. It's just there's a reaction. I got nothing else to give them.
I love that. Well, look, we're coming to the end of this conversation. I want to ask you a question on a personal note. You are the CEO of a very successful organization.
Yeah.
I'm the CEO of this organization. It's only been a year or so. We've done a lot in a year. You say you coach CEOs and you speak with CEOs. What advice would you give me building this men's wellness and mental health platform? Knowing me as you know me now.
Don't be afraid to make noise. Don't be afraid to upset people. Whilst I was growing as a CEO and growing my brand and the organization, there was a point when I became very despised. Success breeds envy, and envy breeds negativity from other people. So you just got to stay focused on the mission. And if your mission is to make this organization, this company big, or if it's not to become multimillionaires, it is to become a successful in the service that you're trying to deliver. You can deliver successful projects without becoming a multi-million pound organization. Sometimes people chase the money and forget the mission. Stay on target with what. Remember your raison d'etre, the reason you set this company up in the first place. I've seen too many companies. They'll go in and they'll go in a different direction of travel because that's where the money is over there, and that's not what they're set up to do. It's not what's listed at company's house. In their mission statement, they've drifted. So stay focused and be prepared to wound people up. If you're winding people up, then you're being successful. The last thing you want to do is sit down in 20 years' time and say, I've not wound anybody up. Because that means you've not done anything, you've not made any noise.
Interesting.
You've got to make some noise. You've got to make the noise so that your customers, when you make noise, your customers benefit from that noise. If you work silently, I see so many CEOs say, I don't want to, my head's not going above the radar.
What does noise look like to you?
Noise means whatever your subject matter is, you're the expert on that subject matter. Go and challenge your stakeholders. Challenge a company, challenge your customers and say, you think you don't need my product? This is why you need it. You don't think you don't need to hear my message? This is why you need to hear it. Because sometimes people are just as they want, society sometimes wants to live under the radar. Every now and then you've got to grab society and say, right, listen to this problem that we've got going on in society. Yeah. Mental health is one of them. So we're only talking about it today. 10 years ago, we weren't talking about it. The only reason we're talking about it today is because somebody made some noise somewhere. So as a CEO, you've got to be prepared to go out there and make the noise and take the criticism.
I like that.
Put your suit of armour on because you're going to get hit every now and then.
I've got a few bruises.
That's good.
Well, look, it's been so enjoyable talking to you.
Likewise.
You're a good man. You've been through a lot. You're a great storyteller. I've sat here and just listened and heard your stories, and I feel inspired. You're a strong man to do what you've done. I think seeing its success and hearing about it, I can see why. And, I'm getting to know you, but I feel proud. I feel proud that you've been able to do what you do. And I can see how you inspire so many people, disabled people, and the work you've done is phenomenal. So it's a real pleasure and honor that you've come down.
I want to watch your journey as well now. So now we've connected. I wish you all the success, because I really do want to see you going to do some amazing things.
I will do that. And I'll be speaking to you about making more noise. But thank you, man. Thank you so much for coming down.
Thanks very much.